morning, grasshoppers. Just wanted to do a very quick Tal study stream as I'm going to start doing games from his youth forward. A quick Ruy Lopez from Tal in the World Students Team Tournament, the Soviet Union versus Yugoslavia. Ivkov playing black opts for the standard main line of the Ruy Lopez. And of course, now that e4 is guarded, black has to defend e5 by removing the tension on his knight. And black threatens to play the marshal, and Tal wholeheartedly invites it, but black bows out. Restricting the bishop on c8 is relatively key, absolutely and relatively key. And at this moment, black goes for the older Chigorin's line of defense, where the center is held. As we talked about before, and we reiterate all the time, we either give up the center, we either hold the center, or we attack the center. Most masters opt to either hold the center or attack the center. Very few really want to give up the center. Now black looks like he's completed his development, and Tal now is opting for maneuvering a knight toward the center. Black sort of restricts the knight from entering the king side, and right now Tal barges forward on the queen side by challenging the knight on a5. And uses this opportunity to obtain a relatively passed pawn on the c file. Bishop to king, bishop 1. How is this possible? 1 second here. Let me just check our move order. Rook to e3 is correct. Oh yeah, bishop to king, bishop 1. Now black, of course, is trying to opt for that King's Indian formation with bishop to f1, and white fights for the long diagonal as well. Black wishes to take a moment to bother the rook, and the rook shifts across, perhaps to even target the isolated pawn on a6. Black ties down his queen for just a moment and allows some simplification in the center that could even win a pawn. However, instead of that, black goes for a counterattack on the bishop on b2 with queen takes knight pawn. And right now, white has focused all of his energy, Mikhail Tal, on the attack on the long diagonal toward the king side. Knight to h5, of course, is the only way to save the knight without losing more material. That is rather interesting. Could he have just gone queen rook to b8? Very interesting. And it is also probable that if black had played pawn takes pawn, knight takes pawn, would put pressure on the knight on d7, as well as prepare knight to g4, which might rip open the king side, creating unbearable tension on that side of the board. So knight h5 is pretty logical. The discovery is in progress, and now Tal has two very aggressive pawns in the center. Black is constantly improving his pieces, while white returns to the center with the rook in order to perhaps even blockade this pawn with the bishop going to c3. Bishop takes knight prepares to remove a defender of the pawn, and white opts, as we mentioned before, to tag the queen before recapturing on f3. Finally, both of black's rooks are in the game. As white presses forward, black blockades, and now white activates the final rook for perhaps a rival on the 7th rank. Just a brief stop on b6 in order to reinforce the two center pawns. Now the knight on h5 is being put to the question. Is there a way to guard it? Perhaps not. Bishop takes, pawn takes, and now with the move f5, Tal forces a resignation as he cannot allow anything to come in on his king side. Now what is the story here with bishop takes e3? I imagine after queen takes e3, he cannot handle queen to g5 check, pawn pushing possibly with other stuff, or this pawn moving forward. In general, though, white has an overwhelming position. Well, that's it for the quick short stream. Thank you for bearing with me. It was quite good, quite logical, and quite short. Have a good evening.